This is Mould on Markets with Investment Director Russ Mould. Russ, how are you?
Very well, Clara. How are you?
Not too bad
Good.
at all.
Delighted to hear it.
What is it that advisors and their clients should be thinking about at the moment?
Well, for the next couple of weeks, the markets are going to be thinking about the colour beige. Now, looking at you today, I'm not sure it's necessarily top of your fashion list, but from a markets perspective, it's going to be incredibly important because on the 3rd of December, the US Federal Reserve publishes its beige book.
Yeah. For those of us who aren't familiar with that gripping novel, could you remind us what it is?
With pleasure. It is a collection of anecdotal evidence gathered by the US Federal Reserve on the US economy, split into 12 different regions. It comes out 8 times a year. This is the last one. And certainly if you go back to the October document, the theme was one of modest growth, moderate improvement. So yeah, I'll grant you it wasn't the most, it wasn't Robert Harris, but from an economic perspective, it's very, very important stuff. There were some indications of improvement in things like retail, travel and leisure, which is quite good, and also some improvement in appetite for commercial debt, but not for consumer loans. Now, we have been through some degree of deleveraging, some degree of debt reduction, and clearly if consumer borrowing and appetite for risk starts to pick up, that could be a good sign for the US economy.
Yeah, we've just had the latest revision of the US Q3 GDP number, haven't we?
It was a thumper, yeah, 3.9% year-on-year growth, revised up from 3.3, and that's the sort of number that's provoking this great big debate. Will the US Federal Reserve raise interest rates in 2015 or not? And if it does, by how much and when? I'm not sure that the Fed will be dashing to raise rates. Europe and Japan are actually looking to play fast and loose. So the US won't want to tighten and drive the dollar through the roof because the weak dollar has helped exports. And equally, America's still got an awful lot of debt. I know we've talked a little bit then about deleveraging. The annual budget deficit has come down to less than 3% of GDP, but the net number's still going up. The aggregate figure is now a mere $17 trillion, 1 times GDP, and that trend is shown in the first chart behind us here, dating all the way back to 1950. Up, like that.
Yeah, so what you're saying, I guess, is that the foundations of the US economy might not be as sound as some of us thought?
I mean, I don't think anybody likes to think that anything's built on a mountain of debt, quite frankly, but on a relative basis, I think you've still got to say the US is in better shape than maybe everybody except the UK, oddly enough. Shale, cheap energy, onshoring of jobs, and the fact that the Americans were really quick to deal with their banking crisis in 08-09 does mean it's on a less wobbly base than probably most other countries. But again, that debt accumulation is quite worrying. The second chart behind us shows the compound annual growth rate in US GDP, decade by decade back to 1910. I'm that sort of guy. And as you can see, the growth rate at the end here is actually the lowest since the 1930s. So there is an argument to be made that this debt is weighing on the economy, it is clogging up the works, and that's why the Fed won't want to raise rates too quickly, because it will jack up the interest bill, suck cash out of the economy, and potentially slow things down again. The final chart makes this quite clear, looking at the blue bars of the compound GDP growth by decade against the red line of the aggregate debt, and the higher the debt goes, the slower growth becomes. It may be a link, it may not. Looks quite convincing to me, I have to say, but again, it may be a reason why the Fed looks to keep things looser for longer in 2015, even if they'll talk a fairly hawkish game to keep the bond vigilantes happy.
Okay, Russ, thank you.
Pleasure.
That's it from us. We'll see you next time.